which was good. It's great to be here. I'm sort of a bit of an affiliation with the club now because my son's now playing for the Newcastle Knights. Well, he's not playing at the moment because he injured his pec, but he was going to come along and have a couple of words this afternoon, but he had to go and see the specialist in Sydney. But he'll be back. And I got just off the phone to him, he's got some good news. He's going to be back a bit earlier than he thought, so that's very good news for the Knights, yeah, exactly. My career was built around, as a player, was built around the one percenters. It was around, I didn't have a lot of natural skill, didn't have the natural huge frame, nor outstanding speed, but what I had was a burning desire to be my best, and that was something that I harnessed to great effect in relation to working out all the little things that I needed to address that could give me an edge, because I believed if I was maximised my preparation in this space, and this space, then collectively I would be competitive. And so I went on then to go and represent my country, and I coached at the top level. And then when I finished coaching, I decided to get out of coaching 18 years ago, and I took a whole lot of the knowledge that I'd acquired to the business world. Back when I played, you had to work a job. So I actually was working while I was playing rugby league. I actually completed a science degree at New South Wales Uni, studied psychology there, did a DPed at the end of it, and I did school teaching because the teaching hours were great for footy. Finish at 3:30, and then I could get to training at 5 o'clock. And but what I learnt was a lot of time management, as well as discipline to focus on the key things that will get me a result. Didn't waste time at all. So for me, what I want to do today is, based on the brief, is to share some of the insights that I have acquired over the years and tools and techniques around creating a high-performance culture, what that's about, because a lot of businesses don't quite understand the fundamentals and the science of creating a high-performance culture. Where do you see a high-performance culture? You see it, particularly a high-performance team culture. You see it in the landscape of professional sport, really good professional sports teams. You see it in special forces in the army. You see that really great teamwork in the fire brigade, that sort of stuff. And what do all those things have in common? When I look at each of those, I say, well, what they've got in common is they actually practice much more than they execute. Professional sports team will practice 5 days a week. 1 rest day, 1 game day. But in business, it's pretty much 5 game days, 2 rest days, and where's the practice days? When I ask business leaders how important is teamwork, they go, wow, it's really critical. Fantastic, okay. So what are you doing to practice the teamwork? What do you mean? Well, what are you doing to practice the teamwork? Do you understand what are the core fundamentals? And they can't tell you. So I'm going to share with you a very simple model, but I think it's a really succinct model that talks to what it is that we need to get in place to create a high-performance team culture. And I'm going to give you I'm going to do a couple of little exercises as well, little activities in that space. I'll just go through that to this one. And this talks to the pattern of world change. The pattern of world change was fairly constant through the 19th century, or 20th century. From 1900 through till the early 1990s, the rate of change was quite linear. So one day ambled into the next, there was a little bit of change, but not a lot. Then the world connected to the internet. And then what happened was we moved into this space of exponential change, which is where we are at the moment. Information transfer equated to a lot more shared ideas, and the world is changing faster and faster. Why I share that with you? Because that has implications for us as leaders, because we're leading people into a space of incredible change. With that comes uncertainty, instability, and that creates emotional challenges for people, of which we have to lead. But the paradigms of business have also shifted. The old world of business, left of that dotted line, was very much anchored in the paradigm of efficiency. If I'm more efficient with my resources, my business is going to make more money. Nowadays, that sits there as a secondary driver. It's not the primary driver. The primary driver nowadays is innovation. You don't innovate, you're going to get left behind. And you look at companies, really successful companies like Kodak, gone. You're very young people, but people my age, we all had a BlackBerry phone or a pager or that sort of stuff back in the 80s and early 90s. Nowadays, gone. Didn't innovate. Replaced by Samsung, by Apple. Multitude of industries have just gone by the wayside because they haven't grasped this concept of innovation. And another key rule at Shift was the responsibility principle. So bosses back in business back in those days treated people like cogs in a machine. This is your area of responsibility, and you're going to work with you, and this is your area of responsibility. And if you both work together, you're going to be getting a great result, like a well-oiled machine. Fantastic. Sounds great in principle. But what happens is in a rapidly changing world, I designate this responsibility to you and to you, but like these icebergs that drift apart, in a rapidly changing world, who's addressing the stuff in between, because the world's changing so quickly. So nowadays, the concept of responsibility has been replaced by the term accountability, because accountability is taking account of an outcome and owning the outcome. It's not being responsible for the input. Yeah, it's much broader, and it's not ringing a call center and getting flicked from this person to that person to that person. The really proactive call centers now, what do? Someone takes ownership of that customer to a resolution. The big one, a huge shift has occurred in the space of transparency. The old world was about we could bend the rules, we get away with stuff. You know, there was a deadline and we just push it back a little bit. It's okay, we'll make it happen. Or we're supposed to do it this way, but don't worry about that. We'll fix it up. Nowadays, transparency, squeaky clean. You can't get away with anything, right? And I think the turning point for that was, in my view, in the mid-90s there, very, very high-profile turning point was the New South Wales Police Royal Commission, where a whole lot of cops got out of the police force or some went to jail because of practices that were not living up to the standards expected. Some were criminal. Yeah. Nowadays, this transparency piece. In fact, the Catholic Church is going through its issues at the moment, right? Not for stuff that happened yesterday, for stuff that happened a long time ago, but the transparency piece has come to the fore. Why do I share this with you? I share this with you because from the perspective of us in here, the old world was much more anchored in the concept of management, whereas today it's really much more about leadership. Management, back in the 80s, when I was in the workforce and I was playing footy, you got a promotion to be a team leader. They didn't send you on a leadership course back in the 80s. They sent you on a management course. This term leadership course wasn't around. Yeah? Nowadays, no one gets sent on a management course. Everyone gets sent on a leadership course, because the actual, this important shift has been from getting stuff done, the management of getting stuff done, to this space of actually leading people into this uncertain world, which is really what the primary role or primary interest of this particular course is, in that space. But if to be a good boss, you've got to shift between the two. I use the term leadership, because leadership is the ability to shift from leadership to management based on the needs of any given day. Yeah. So I ask you this question: why do people get promoted to be a team leader? What's the main reason they get promoted to be a team leader? What criteria is used generally? Generally, it's technical skills. You're a really good salesperson, we'll make you the team leader. Okay? You're a really good technical person, we'll make you the team leader. But I come into that role with a good technical base, not a good understanding of the leadership stuff, because there ain't too many people who do these sort of courses before they get appointed. That's why hats off to HunterNet and the people who are behind such an initiative, because it is a wonderful initiative. So this leadership stuff is really interesting. Have a look at this.
That's not good.
Oh, I don't need this. I'm already late.
Somebody will come. Anybody out there?
Do you have a phone?
No. Sorry. Somebody! Hello? There are 2 people stuck on an escalator and we need help. Now, would somebody please do something? I don't believe this. You gotta be kidding me.
I'm gonna cry.
Well, there's nothing else we have to do, is there?
And that's a really good example of the difference between management and leadership, okay? Because management is about saying, this is where we're going to get to, and I'm going to make sure you guys, I'm going to push you to get there, okay? Whereas leadership is actually working with people for them to want to get to where we're going to get to, okay? And understanding, okay, well, these people, they've been told this is where we're going to get to, but they get to a point where they don't think they can do it. By the way, has anyone ever been in a position like that in their heads where I can't do this? When in actual fact we could, and we can. Yeah, I can't put this wires in the back of this CD player to connect it up to the television. Anyone ever sort of said that? Or anyone sort of said, I can't lose that weight? Or anyone sort of, we actually tend to do that from time to time. The little mind viruses take over inside our heads. One of the big roles of a coach, which is a really important leadership skill, is actually to work with people to help them believe that they can. Because belief is the number one enabler of success in any domain in life. And it's all to do with what we tell ourselves. In terms of basically this world of management to leadership sort of stuff leading into culture is really about us understanding that in this rapidly changing world, we need to continue to learn, unlearn, relearn. We need to identify what are the 1%ers that will allow us to be the best we can be. And if we have that deep desire and deep understanding to continue to learn, and we have this curiosity to want to be the best, then we are actually on the journey of a lifetime. And it is quite amazing. I'm still on that journey, and I'm still learning, and I'm still seeking to learn. And for me, it is an incredibly exciting and rewarding journey. This is an interesting question. What's the number one enabler of a great team culture? What do you think the number one enabler is? Anyone got any ideas? Trust is really important, yeah, but it's not the number one enabler. Communication is very important. It's not the number one enabler. Nah, you're actually staring at it. It's the quality of the team leader. You're staring at the people in the room. It's actually the quality of the team leader, because the quality of the team leader determines those other factors that you're talking about: the trust, the team, the goals we're heading towards, all that sort of stuff. It's the quality of the team leader. To that end, I want to show you this slide, because this is a really interesting slide. Okay, so this is actually some research from Korn Ferry, international recruitment company. This is in Australia, leadership competencies in Australia. They looked at the top 16 leadership competencies in Australia. Okay, what they did was they looked at, and this was commissioned on behalf of NBN Co. They were looking for a whole lot of leaders, and they wanted to know where the gaps were. And what they did was they plotted them on this matrix. So there's 16 leadership competencies. Okay, so here on this axis is talent supply. So how easy can I go out and recruit this particular skill? Easy to recruit down here, high supply. Low supply, hard to recruit. Now, if I can't recruit them, can I train them? So how easy are they to train to how hard are they to train? So down here, you've got the easiest to recruit and easiest to train. And you're looking at customer focus, driving results, those that can really good at planning and aligning people, that sort of stuff, all that sort of technical stuff, right? Up the other end, the number one leadership competency gap in Australia is building effective teams. In and around that, you've got driving vision and purpose, which is essentially the core of culture. And you've also got developing talent, which is coaching your people. And the other one sits there. These three are all sort of very much people orientated. This one down here is the technical skill of managing ambiguity, which is actually a mindset. So what this talks to is that we're not very good, or in Australia, leaders aren't that talented and competent in this stuff of working with people. Yeah. So what that means is there's going to be a significant challenges for for employers to recruit people who have these really important leadership competencies. There's a massive shortage of high quality leaders out there. That's what I'm saying here. That's why you people, if as young leaders, wish I could go back 30 years and understand and be informed of this sort of stuff, probably more than 40 years actually, 40 years, yeah. Go back 40 years and be informed of this sort of stuff, then wow, I would be setting my mind to really making a mark, more so than what I have at the moment. This is what I want to share with you, this pyramid, okay? And the pyramid for me is really the nuts and bolts, the core of what it is that we need to have in place to create a high-performance team culture. Whoever said trust before? Who said trust? Talked about trust as a key enabler. Yeah, it was very important because at the end of the day, it's a foundation. Unless we create a high trust climate in an organisation or my team that I'm running, then what happens is I have absolutely no strong foundation to create a high performance team culture. Simple as that. Why is that so important? Because fundamental human need for all of us is to be safe. Safety is one of Maslow's basic needs. And if I don't feel in a relationship with someone, if I don't feel that sense of trust, I don't feel safe. Yeah? And if I don't feel safe when it comes to communication, for example, what do? I close up. I'm not going to share stuff with you. And what happens when I close up? The business struggles, our relationship struggles, and we don't perform. But if I trust you and I open up, wow, different story, different kettle of fish. Yeah? So there's three elements to this trust. The first one is the competency piece, and there's a whole lot of work being done by the Covey Institute in this space, and they identified these three key elements. The first one is competency. So do you have the skills and knowledge? So do your people believe you have the skills and knowledge to do the task of being a leader? Now, if they do believe that, then you will be a long way down the track to get in their trust. So how do you demonstrate the skills and competencies? I'll show that a bit more in a moment. The reliability is the next one. You've got to walk the talk. Simple as that. You don't walk the talk, you're not going to trust people. You think about yourself. If someone doesn't do what they say they're going to do, then it's hard to trust them. The third one is sincerity, and that is, can you trust people to do the right things, to act with integrity, to act in your best interests? Yeah, and those three collective areas have been broken down into 13 behaviours that we can measure in a team, or an individual can measure in themselves as to identifying where the gaps in our culture are, or where the gaps in my leadership capability are. So I'm going to give you a sheet, which is a sheet that off the research from the Covey Institute, they identified 13 behaviours. I've transformed these 13 behaviours into a high trust and low trust behaviours, so they become a little metric. And this metric, I'll give it, I'm going to pass one out, thanks. Thank you. Can you pass those out for me so I can keep talking? Yeah. Thanks a lot, Tom. There's a high trust, low trust version of each of these behaviours, and why I'm giving this to you, because one of the things I do, I run lots of workshops for companies around Australia. I'm off to Hong Kong next week doing some stuff over there with a company overseas. But this is a really good tool to use to measure the trust metric and trust dynamic of a team. So what we could do, for example, you could use this to also assess yourself, but if I was a team leader and I'm facilitating a session with a team, what I would do is I would get everybody to sort of think of, just reflect on your team and the way people interact. Okay, and if I was getting a score of our culture, I would say this is not about your behaviour. This is about the way people normally do stuff. right? And I would say, okay, now let's go through behaviour by behaviour, and where is most of the behaviour happening? Is it in the left side space, in the high trust space? So for example, under talking straight, is it be honest up front, let others know what you generally think, tell the truth, say it as it is? Or is it in the low trust space that people beat around the bush, use flattery, they spin the truth, they give group think tendencies, give false impressions, or lie? Where is most of the behaviour happening? And you could say, okay, it's in the left box most of the time, it's in the right box, or if there's a bit of both, tick the medium box. So what you do is you get everybody to do that, and you go through all those different behaviours, and then what we do is we then, up on the whiteboard, you have these 13 behaviours, and you have 3 columns. You have high, medium, low. Okay, and we go through the 25 people that are in the room. For example, how many people think we're high for talking straight? 10 people put their hands up, you put 10 there, and you go through and you actually score it. And what you do is you give it a because trust is a feeling, it's not a cognitive process we go through, it's actually a feeling. I feel I trust you, or I don't feel I trust you. We can actually give the high trust behaviours a +1 score, the low trust behaviours a -1 score, and the medium behaviours are 0. So what we do is we add those scores up, and we come to an absolute score, which might be trust might be +6, demonstrate respects might be +10, create transparency might be -6. So we're going to get and identify where the real gaps are in our trust, in our culture, around trust. Because if we don't identify where we need to put our attention and where we need to focus as a leader, we're not doing our job. Because to my way of thinking and the way I view leadership, the number one role, if there's anything else to do about leadership, the number one most important aspect of leadership is to focus your people's attention on what the most important priorities are. Because attention and our ability to focus attention is, as an individual, where productivity comes from. And if I'm not focusing my attention on the important things and I'm not working to align my people with the most important behaviours, for example, then I'm not doing my job as a leader. So that's just a little tool that you can use, really powerful metric that you can come up with with a score down the bottom. So you add up, there'd be a 4th column, which is the score column on the whiteboard, and down the bottom you can add up the total score down the bottom, and you can remeasure 3 months down the track, 6 months down the track, and you can actually see whether or not how the trust is tracking overall, and how the gap behaviours, the ones that are the negative behaviours or the low scores, how they are tracking as well. I actually was just, last 2 weeks I've been working up at, I've been flying up to the far north coast to a construction site where they're building big roads for the main highways up there. And there's one particular company up there that there's a fair bit of conflict within the organisation. And went up there a couple of weeks ago and did a session with them, and we scored the trust scores, and you wouldn't believe, there were only 2 positive scores out of the 13. All the rest were negative, which was to be understood. It's easy to understand that given the dynamics that was going on. But we did some work around, after that first session, around people understanding each other and working better together and identifying where the touch points needed to be, and we've eliminated all but 2 of the negatives within 10 days. So people can respond pretty quickly once you focus their attention on the right areas. And what I see as the purpose of the day is to give you a few little techniques that you can actually start to. I know, anyone in here in actual leadership role at the moment? Okay, so you've got quite a few. Okay, so these are some techniques you can actually take back and use with your people to help demonstrate competency. Yeah. The second one there is that walk the talk. It's about following up. We say we're going to do this, we do it. And the third one's really is about the way you do things, integrity. I want to just keep moving because off the back of, I want to just share with I've only got 2 hours, so I want to share the 4 levels of the pyramid, and also do a couple of interactive exercises with you. This one here talks to the difference between a mediocre culture and a high performance culture. High performance culture, a lot of interactions between most of the team members. Yep. A mediocre culture, a couple of strong relationships, and then there's others that are on the outer. Okay, there's cliques in this type of culture. Why do you think these people here might be, hypothetically, why might they be not really connected to these other people? What reasons might that occur?
Chain of command.
Chain of command. Does that stop you from having a close relationship with someone?
Did my old job.
Sorry?
Did my old job.
Yeah, which that's probably the media culture, yeah. But it's really to do with when you're talking about chain of command, you're talking about geographic spread.
Yep.
Okay, so quite often it's more the geographic spread, because I know in this high performance culture it shouldn't, because if I'm the team leader, and we're talking about a functional team here, team leader, I should be connecting with all team members. Yeah. So that's not the reason. What's another reason?
Trust.
Sorry?
The trust between the people.
Trust, absolutely. Yeah, I don't trust you, so I'm not really going to share some stuff with you. But the trust, it's a chicken or the egg thing. Why don't I trust you? And it could be because of that. It could be because you're a different type of person. You know, I'm that sort of really friendly, gregarious type person. You're a really quiet, introverted sort of type. Guess what? I'm probably not going to have much interaction with you. I should be, because I should be making the effort. But if you're a different type of person and I don't understand you, because a lot of us don't learn this stuff at school, the typical thing, oh, well, this is a person over here I gravitate towards. Fair enough. But as a leader, I've got to make the effort to engage in that sort of person. So there's a number of reasons why that occurs. But the bottom line is that over here, we have a lot more connections, a lot more trust as a result of that. And what that results in is a much better energy about the team. And actually what happens is, in the high performance teams, this type of team, we have an incredible amount of energy in the team. Yeah? And we as human beings, excuse me, we are differentiated from a dead person because of the energy we have. That's all it is. I'll just show you, this is quite a little interesting little device I got. It's I bought it for $6.99 off the internet because I was at a party and a couple of the kids there had one of these. What it is, it's actually got a couple of diodes in there, a couple of wires. One end goes to a little bit of a metal tape. Other end, there's a small capacitor in there, and there's a small speaker in there. But what this actually represents or measures and represents a show, it demonstrates, is the electricity in my body, the energy in my body. Because watch this. Yeah, so pretty cool, no tricks there. Why I show that to you is because the energy in my body is variable, and it varies in terms of frequency based on my emotional state. High frequency energetic vibration in the body, positive emotions. Low frequency resonation of energy, frequency of energy, is the more negative emotions. And that actually is contagious. As a leader, I need to be in that high frequency energy space as much as I possibly can, because that's the way people are feeling me. It's the way I'm going to present to people. And we have an energetic aura, energetic field. I'm emitting electrons from my body constantly. All of us are. Okay? And we get a sense of that. Do you want to just stand up for a sec? Can I ask you to stand up for a sec, thanks? Yeah. And can I ask you two to come over here? Just come over here for a second. It's a little demonstration. Because we're actually all connected, believe it or not. So you want to just stand up? Yeah, stand up.
Yep.
Yeah, just grab each other's hand for a sec. Just grab the end of that. And if I can just show you this. So if you can see that. No. All right, let go. Yep. Just rate your hand over there. Okay, connect. So what we can see, thank you. Give them a round of applause. That was a great demonstration. That was, very rarely do I get people who do such a good demonstration as that, right? What we just saw there was the energy that we actually have inside of us, and that energy has a frequency, and we need to be really conscious as leaders of that that frequency, and that means we need to be conscious of our energetic state or emotional state. From the perspective of us as leaders, we also what's going on here? Did that switch off? don't know why the PowerPoint's, oh, there it is. Okay. As a team leader, if I'm looking to optimize my culture, there's two key critical areas of attention I need or focus that I need to attend to. The first one is the human capital. So I need to develop and work to help my people be the best they can be as individuals. It's obvious, yeah? I need to work my people to develop them to be the best they can be. But that's not good enough, because we need to get them also working together. So I need to actually get them understanding each other better. And I need to get them working together as a team. It's a social capital. And the social capital piece is often forgotten and overlooked and underestimated in teams. Because what happens in your businesses, correct me if I'm wrong, there's an induction process, yeah? Very good. Businesses have got induction processes. But when you go through the induction process, typically what happens? You go in, this is so-and-so, this is the process, and go forth and multiply with the dollars for the business. But where is the social capital investment? How do you get integrated into the team so that you actually connect with each other? Have a look at this. This is a really good little clip from a movie, Remember the Titans. Remember the Titans is a movie that was set back in the late 60s, early 70s in America, in South America, where they had separate blacks and white schools. So anyhow, this particular school is the first year that they've brought the blacks and whites together. Denzel Washington plays the role of the head coach. He has to bring the blacks and whites together in the footy team. Have a look what he does.
Plastic. I want you to tell me something about one of your black teammates.
Sir, yes, sir. I'm rooming with Blue, sir, and I noticed that he wears those leopard spotted underwears, bikini style, sir.
Okay, maybe somebody who's not your roommate.
Sir, I eat lunch with Rev. That's Jerry Harris, sir. People call him Rev because he's always praying he won't bat a foul tongue, sir.
And what is the Rev gonna do after high school?
I don't know. Go to college and all that.
Anybody else? No volunteers? Campbell? Bertia? No one. Each one of you will spend time every day with a teammate of a different race. You will learn about him and his family, his likes, his dislikes. You'll report back to me until you meet every one of your teammates. Until that time, we go to 3-a-day practices. You continue to ignore each other, we'll go to 4-a-day practices. Now, is there any part of this that you don't understand?
So what's he trying to do? Anyone got any ideas? I'm sure you're smart enough to work out what he's trying to do. It's not rocket science. Sorry?
Create better relationships.
Yeah, he's trying to get people to understand each other better so they can actually have a better relationship, yeah? Believe it or not, that same principle in a slightly different format, in a slightly different manner, same principle that professional sports teams go through every year. The start of the season, they'll have an away camp, an offside camp somewhere, and they'll go through exactly a slightly different way it's applied, but the same principle. In fact, the state of origin teams, when they go into camp before the first state of origin, it's a tough gig for the coaches to bring them together. 8 days they've only got in camp. That coach has got to bring them together within that 8-day time frame from being a non-team to being a high-performing team. But the first 2 days of that camp, there's no football. No football. Okay? It's all about bonding. It's all about building connections, trusting each other, and building understanding of each other. That's how important it is. You spend 1/4 of the time doing that before they go into the technical stuff of running with the ball and doing game plans and all that sort of stuff. So really, really important aspect of what it takes to become a high-performance team culture. But it's really not applied in business. So I'm going to put us through a little state of origin, fast-track bonding experience, right? Because I'm going to let you guys experience what it's like. So what I want you to do is grab someone in the room that you don't know that well. Obviously, it's not going to be too hard because some of you are from all different businesses, right? But it's the third session. I know you've done a networking session, so you probably connected with few people already. But grab someone you don't know that well, pair up with them, and then we're going to give you a little task. All right, yeah? We're going to have a conversation. So up, stand her up, move around. You're aspiring leaders, so don't wait there. Grab someone whom you want to grab. If I was going to do this exercise with my team or a team, okay, when I run the sessions, I actually don't say partner up with someone you don't know because everyone knows everybody. But what I do is I say don't partner up with your best buddy. And who I want you to partner up with is people that fit one of three criteria. First one is someone you've had a dispute with, and there's a bit of tension there. It's not quite fully resolved. Could have been years ago. Second person is someone that's a different type of person to you, whom you just don't normally associate with because they're all a different type of person, or they're in another part of the floor, another part of the business. Third type of person is someone whom, if I communicated and connected with them better, then it would help my job and me perform my job much easier. So those are the three criteria I would say to the people in the session. But here we just did it slightly differently. Now the next step is this. You're going to have a conversation, yeah? And the conversation is going to be around a topic I'm going to give you, which has got nothing to do with work. Yep. And the thing is, you're going to take your mask off and you've got to share a bit about you, right, in relation to the topic. And see those two fingers there? Those two fingers represent everything you could possibly know about me, or everything I could possibly know about you, right? So those two fingers over here is the typical, that's how much you typically know about people you work with. It's pretty superficial the conversations you have with people at work, particularly those ones that aren't your best buddies, and they're the ones you're sitting with, right? So I want you, but then again, over here is a no-go zone. And in relation to the no-go zone, don't go in there. I don't want anyone to go in the no-go zone. But look at the space between the two thumbs, which is the area of potential new understanding I could have of you as a result of this conversation. That's where we want to go. Right, yeah? So work out who's going to go first now, before I give you the topic. Yeah, you can do whatever you like. Work out who's going to go first. Okay. Now, how many people delegated you're going to go first? Now that's leadership, isn't it? Hey, that's leadership. Well, that's management. Right here. The topic is this. If you knew me better. So if you knew me better, what would you know about me? Okay, so if you knew me better, you would know that my nickname's Junior. And I was called Junior because, I started playing first grade at a pretty young age, and everyone has to have a nickname in first grade, so that was Junior. If you knew me better, you'd know I'd never ever drunk alcohol, which is quite weird for a rugby league player. Yeah, but the reason was that my dad was an alcoholic, and he died when I was 14, and I saw alcohol as destroying his life. And when he was fine, great dad when he was sober, but when he was drunk, he'd quite often get aggressive and come home and it'd be a bit of violence, and sometimes he hit my mum at times. So I saw alcohol as evil. All my mates drink, I've got no problem with that, but I chose not to drink. If you knew me better, you would know that I detached the retina in my eye. I went to put a really big hit on when I was about 20 years of age, and the guy went to palm me off, and his thumb went straight through my eyeball and squashed it. So I went to hospital and had an operation, but I can see out of the eye, but it's blurred, like looking through 3 Coke bottles. So I used to struggle trying to catch balls coming from that side. And I was probably the only rugby league player, because it's hard to judge depth, because the binocular disparity is not there. So when the ball went in the air, I was probably the only rugby league player to say, "Your ball," rather than my ball. So the topic is, if you knew me better, you've got 2.5 minutes each. I'll tell you when to swap over. One person go first. The other person can ask questions, but let the other person speak mainly. Okay, let's go. Right. Okay. So the difference between the objective of this particular exercise and the pure networking thing is actually this is all about authenticity. It's about me actually being authentic and actually taking the mask off. The more authentic you are, the more other people will be able to relate to who you are. Okay. So the next topic is what's the most courageous thing you've ever done? So courage talks to different things for different people. Okay, so the little voice inside your head said, don't do it, but you went ahead and did it. For some people, it's public speaking for the first time. For some people, it's getting out of a relationship. For some people, it's getting into a relationship. For some people, it's confronting an authority figure whom you didn't know what the consequences were going to be. For some people, it could be moving out of home for the first time, could be moving to another country. For some people, it could be physically putting yourself in danger. What is it for you? For me, the most courageous thing I ever did, because I was a non-drinker, when I first came into the top level of rugby league, where there was this huge alcohol culture back in the early 80s, and every Tuesday night they'd go down to the pub after training to have half a dozen beers and to have their meal. I go along, I wanted to fit in. I was a 19-year-old wanting to fit in, but I didn't want to drink. And there was the pressure on me to drink. So what do? Do I drink to try and fit in, or do I not drink? Because that's what I believe in. I elected not to drink, and I felt a little bit of an outcast for the first couple of weeks, but then they could see I could have a bit of fun with them and fit in okay. And what really was the catch-up, was when I'm over, was when I was able to drive them home because I was sober. Then I was okay, and then they embraced me. Yeah? So what is it? Just think about for you. What is it for you? Because we've all, no one's got a Victoria Cross, but we've got our own version of what it is that's the most courageous thing we've done. So just share that, and share what the scenario around it, how it impacted on you, how have you grown from it? Okay? Work out who's going to go first, and I'll tell you when to swap over. Let's go. Just interested. Did you find anything interesting, or did you speak to three boring people? No. It's the first question was first topic was pretty much just a get-in question, just to give us a bit of confidence, and the next two were pretty raw. Most courageous thing and biggest obstacle. Did you speak to anybody? I don't even know who it was, but did anyone have the privilege of speaking to someone, and the person who was speaking to you got a little bit emotional? Put your hand up if you had that privilege. Only 2 people in the whole room, 3 people. Okay. I didn't go hard enough with the topics then. Yeah. Because what I'm looking for, if I'm a coach of a team, I'm looking for people to actually express emotion. And it's not tears or anything like that, it's just that bit of a quiver in the voice. Because if you're listening to that, and that's that expression of raw emotion, if I'm listening to somebody sharing that, well, who put their hand up just then? Okay, so either you guys, when you heard somebody share a bit of emotion, how did you feel? Did you sort of have a sense of compassion or empathy?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the normal and authentic reaction, and that is actually where bonding happens. Emotional bonding happens when somebody shares some authentic emotion and you respond with a reciprocal emotion. That's where it happens, okay? And it's very real, and it's something that that really good teams actually understand, because it happens and people are there for each other. So I hope that you got a sense of the worth of an exercise like that, which is actually very easy to build into when you're running teams. Really easy to build it in, because there's a million topics you can talk about, but it's the ones that are a little bit deeper that are going to be the ones that are the most beneficial in terms of that connectivity piece. Just keep moving from that. I want to just talk about this next level of the pyramid. Okay, it's about clear expectations. Really critical to get trust. We have a foundation of trust, but unless I have clear expectations, it is going to cause massive problems, massive issues for the team. This one here, clearly defined team rules. For me, it's the biggest potential upside in businesses. There's a huge amount of frustration which occurs in business teams, correct me if I'm wrong, because of people not adhering to team rules, okay? And because we don't have environments where people are keeping others accountable around those rules, or those rules aren't, I'm not quite clear about those rules, or that rule, and so I'm not really going to say anything to you because I'm not so sure myself, and I don't clarify, but it causes a bit of not negativity, it's actually an energy vampire. You know, lack of adherence to team rules or unclear team rules is an energy vampire. The energy we just talked about before sucks that energy. Do you agree? So one of the things that I do when I work with business teams, and I strongly recommend as a team leader you should do at least a couple of times a year, is actually sit your people down and get them to sort of say, okay, have a think about any annoyances, frustrations, irritations you have around the way people do stuff. And I want you to actually think of a rule that we need to put up there to highlight that will solve the problem. Right? I'll put up, for example, a team I worked with this in the last couple of weeks that we went through this particular process, and I got to set them all down. Okay, think about your frustrations, irritations, any annoyances that you've got. What rule do we need to put in place to actually have everybody on the same page? They came up with these. Right? This is just an example. And if you're a team leader and you do it with your team, you're going to find there's going to be a whole lot of stuff that's going to come up as well. This is where there's lack of alignment. Every one of these bullet points represented a lack of alignment. But this is only just one team, and every team's different. So what I'm sharing with you are little tips and techniques on how we can create this culture where we've got actual alignment around the way we do stuff. Because what's culture? Effectively, it's actually the way we do stuff. It's the way we do stuff. High performance culture has an alignment around a whole lot of principles that we all agree on. So you cool with that? It makes sense? If we go back to this one, clearly defined roles, goals and KPIs. I mean, it might sound that always happens. It doesn't always happen. The number of times I've gone out and worked with teams and people aren't really clear on whose role this is or where the overlap is, and there's issues around, is it my territory, is it your territory? In your businesses, this could be the same sort of things. That needs to be clarified, the goals need to be clarified, KPIs need to be clarified, and obviously the vision, values and behaviours also, which are the cornerstone of the business. I mean, all of that stuff's really, really important. It talks to the expectations. Yeah, makes sense? So I just want us to be, and because I'm conscious of time, I just want us to be really clear that this expectations piece, it sounds pretty simple, pretty straightforward, but there's some massive gaps there. And one of the biggest gaps is around rules that aren't clearly articulated and aren't clearly adhered to. Do you guys agree or not? If I went through the exercise now, I'm sure you could actually come up in your businesses with stuff that you would put down as a rule that needs to be clearly articulated, and everyone needs to align with it, because it's pissing me off. It's frustrating me. Yep. Just moving on from that, the accountability piece is actually a huge, massive piece. Okay, so in a high performance culture, team members will keep themselves accountable. Yep. Goes without saying. But also in a high performance culture, team members keep each other accountable, which might seem foreign to a lot of people in business because they've never experienced that. And a lot of businesses are actually in that space. But I have seen and have worked with businesses that actually are in that space. But when you see the high performing team cultures in sport, everybody gets that. You know, if you're in a training paddock and somebody has the hide or audacity to cut a corner when you're doing a fitness training, the other players will rip into that bloke because they know that they're going to likely just cut a corner in a match, and it's could cost you a game. Yep. It's about having conversations with each other around what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. And it's about the way that we have those conversations and how can we have those conversations in a safe manner. Because I'm not going to, most of the issues around having conversations with others, particularly around performance issues or behaviours, is in how do I have the conversation and still maintain safety? How can I still feel safe? And the tendency is to avoid having that conversation because it doesn't feel safe, and that person, there may be some residue afterwards from that. But the fact is that there's two forms of feedback. There's praise or there's corrective feedback. Yep. Most businesses are not good at giving praise, enough praise, and most businesses are crap at giving corrective feedback. Would you agree? Yeah. Because in our education system, there is no communication course taught. Dot. Donut. Zero. Our teachers don't even learn communication at university. So we don't learn it, and then we go into business and we're expected to step up to the plate and just have these conversations. But if we don't have these conversations in a way that I feel safe or that you feel safe, one of us will go into what's called a distress pattern of behaviour. And each of us has a distress pattern. There are 6 distress patterns of behaviour. And every one of us, depending on our personality type, will go into one of these 6 distress patterns. Some people will attack. Some people will blame. Some people will play the victim. Some people will manipulate. There's these 6 different strategies. And the same pattern every time we'll go into. And it's to do with me not feeling safe and my needs not being met. Yep. But we don't understand this, right? So it's because we don't get taught this. I actually stumbled across a skill set about 8 years ago called Process Communication Model, PCM. And I was that floored by how effective it was that I actually spent 12 months studying it. And I run courses, and I've got it NESA approved for teachers now as professional development and all this sort of stuff. But for me, it opened my eyes to, wow, how we can make conversations safe, and we can actually have these interactions in a manner that's going to keep others accountable, but still maintain a harmonious environment. What I'm going to give you, and from the perspective of coaching as a coach, one of the things that you are constantly having as a coach is interactions around corrective feedback. That's the essence of what coaching is in a professional sporting environment. It's constant feedback around tweaking, how we can improve. And coaching and teaching are different, very different. Teaching is me telling you this is the way to do something. But Roger Federer, does he have a teacher? No. There ain't too many better than him on the planet, but he has a coach. Because the coach doesn't actually teach him anything. The coach actually opens his mind up to possible further opportunities and ways of doing stuff. Yep, and helps him extract the mind viruses from his persona that are actually his biggest opponent. Yeah. So what I've got here is a tip sheet. So if my able assistants can competently do such a great job like you did before. Thank you. Okay. There's a tip sheet on giving and receiving feedback, because that talks to this accountability piece. And it's a tip sheet that I have drafted up based on my around about 40 years of being in that professional space of giving feedback as a player, as a coach, and as a consultant post my sporting career. There's just a number of points on there. Has everyone got a copy? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So there's a whole lot of stuff on there. There's a whole lot of bullet points on giving feedback. There's a whole lot of bullet points on receiving feedback. Just want to bring your attention to a couple of things. Firstly, the first bullet point under giving feedback, it says only deliver feedback with positive intentions. Has anyone here ever given feedback to somebody and the intention hasn't been positive? Stick your hand up if you've got a little child and little Johnny's just embarrassed you down the shopping centre. And you've snapped at little Johnny, right? Because he's really annoyed you. Yep. And the intention was not necessarily positive. Yep. So that talks to the next point. Refrain from giving feedback if you're in a negative emotional space. If you're angry, frustrated, that energy space that we talked about goes down below the positive to the negative space. Withdraw and wait before you give the feedback. Don't give the feedback in that space. Really, really important. There's a whole lot of other stuff there, but there's another really important one at the bottom end there is also when you've given the feedback, check for clarity of message. Make sure that the other person, that you check with the other person that they've understood, or you can validate that they've understood it. Communication, I'm only communicating with you if I offer something and you accept it. If I offer some information or feedback and you've accepted that. And I don't know if you've accepted it by me saying to you, blah, 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 are you good with that? And you say, yeah. How do I know what you have processed? All I know is you've heard something. But I need to ask some sort of feedback question or elicit some sort of response from you that I can get that you've taken on board. Does that make sense? So blah, 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 blah. So what's the key point you're taking on board here? And then if you come back with blee, 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 I'm saying, nah, that's not really what I meant. So unless I ask that, and this is really one of the, in the trust behaviours document that you got there, clarifying expectations is one of the 13 trust behaviours. It is most often one of the biggest gaps in business. Because we're so busy, bang, 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 bang. I say something to someone, you okay with that? Yeah, bang, tick, tick and flick on to the next thing. Quite often, it comes back that person later on will say, oh no, I didn't really that's not really what you said. Yes, I did. But I didn't actually clarify the expectation. I didn't see if the offer was accepted. Make sense? Yep. So that's the giving feedback. The receiving feedback, tips on when you're receiving feedback, really important to particularly important to develop a radar or a sensor for when you're pushing back against the corrective feedback you're receiving. Because the tendency is for a lot of people to actually view that as, ouch, that hurts. And you know why it hurts? Because as a young kid being brought up in our education system, fear of failure is something that we actually acquire and take on board, because when you made a mistake in an exam, or you didn't go so well in an exam, guess what the teachers do? They make you feel not as good as the person who went really well. The person who went really well gets all the accolades, and the person who did not so well feels a bit left out. And then how I translate that, how I interpret that is, well, I don't feel good because the teacher didn't make me feel good, because the teacher looked down on me because I didn't do so well. But because I didn't do so well means I made more mistakes. So that means mistakes is bad. But if I look at someone from a coaching perspective, from a pursuit of excellence perspective, no one is ever going to be great unless they push the envelope and make mistakes. The only people that don't make mistakes are people that sit inside their little box and don't want to step outside that box. Any champion has made multiple mistakes, but they learn from those mistakes. So if you in here have that resistance to feedback, it's something you've got to challenge at the non-conscious mind. That's a mind virus there that's telling you mistakes are bad. No, one-off mistakes aren't bad. If I don't learn from my mistakes, that's bad. That's not so good. Okay? But the actual making mistakes is reflective of the learning process, and it's reflective of high achievers. Make sense? Yeah? So, I mean, that's really, really important. The final part of the puzzle is the piece at the top, piece at the top, which is the coaching mentality and right people in the right roles. From the point of view of coaching mentality, in a high-performance culture, well, firstly, right people in the right roles is absolutely fundamental. And that talks to the recruitment process. And recruitment processes in many organisations are flawed because businesses recruit largely on skill without accommodating character. And character, if you're going to have a high-performance culture, character is the absolute foundation that underpins this trust piece. Because if you have flawed character, then trust is much, much harder to build. If you have people that are flawed, particularly in the integrity space, or they're not team players, selfish, it's really difficult to build that high performance culture. But that should be something that we look at in the recruitment process as well.
So you're talking about
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, for your culture. Yeah. And then once you get those people on board, it's also important to understand that people evolve and people's preferences change and shift. So they might have come on board in this role, but if I have a coaching mindset, I'm staying in tune. I'm in tune with them, and they're helping them get in tune with themselves. They might evolve to another role, maybe at the same level. Maybe they move up to some sort of leadership space. But that coaching mindset is two-way. It's a coaching mindset from you as a boss, where I'm looking for ways to help you be the best you can be. But it's a coaching mindset from team members as well, where they're taking stuff on board and they're asking questions and seeking to be the best they can be. Because if you've got people in your team that are looking for the 1%ers, they're looking to be the best they can be, and they're passionate about what they do, then you've got the really strong raw materials for a team to really move into that high performance, peak performance space. But that attitude, that pursuit of excellence, is really predicated on a burning desire in here. Those of you in here who have got a burning desire to be your best, you'll put the effort in, you'll put the hours in. And for me, that burning desire was always a benchmark and a reference point for me in whatever I did. If I lost that desire, I got out of whatever I was doing. I quit coaching after 7 years. I had another 2 years on my contract, but I felt that the flame was starting to diminish. And I actually got out and moved into this space. And that flame's still burning, probably stronger than ever. And for me, I get up every day, and for me, it's every day is an adventure. But there's not enough hours in the day. That's the problem. But that's the space that I encourage us all to really get into is stay in tune with what your heart's telling you. Stay in tune with what it is that allows that flame to really start burning brightly. And if it starts to diminish, look at what's causing that. Is it the actual environment you're in? Is it factors in your life that you need to get aligned with? Is it the fact that your personality is sort of evolving to the point where the needs are not being met in that environment? You need to move somewhere else. I mean, there's a whole lot of things. But the default state for a human being is to be their best. So I believe that as a leader, and if I have that belief as a leader, then either if somebody's not being their best, it's either external stuff, the external culture's causing that, or stuff in here that they're telling themselves is causing that. Either way, there's a diminished productivity from that person coming from some source. And for me as a leader, it's really about trying to work out what that is and support people in that space. So I wanted to show you this video because I think it's pretty cool. It's from the movie Moneyball, if I go back, and it talks to this culture where in this particular movie they lose this baseball game, and this is a scene in the dressing sheds afterwards. So have a look at this. It's really interesting in professional sport when you have a loss and you go into the dressing room, absolutely like that, unless you're at the clubs that are down the ladder. And I worked in the media a fair bit after I finished playing before I started coaching, and I used to have to go in and do interviews after games. And it's really interesting, the culture, you could tell the culture of the different clubs varied quite significantly. Some of those clubs that were down the ladder, I'd been down the ladder for a fair bit, there was a vibe in there after the game, the players weren't aching. In some of those clubs, their players were joking around, and when they're walking off the field, they're joking around, they've just got hammered. And I'm looking at them thinking, what type of culture, what type of values do you have, Even smiling and laughing, and the fans are at home are aching. Fans have paid money to come through the gates and watch you at the games. They're aching, and you're laughing and joking around because you're picking up your couple $100,000 a year. You know, for me, there's a stink around it. But if, as a leader, I don't nip that in the bud and jump on top of that, then, you know, I'm at fault, absolutely at fault. And I can't really blame those players if the rules hadn't been clarified. Yeah. Just want to talk to this slide here before we finish, and that is on the right hand side there, really the key culture enablers. There's two key culture enablers, pretty obvious. The first one is leadership competency. As I said a bit earlier, the number one enabler of a high performance organisation, a high performance team culture is leadership competency. Yeah. But the other one is your ability to communicate. You don't communicate effectively, what's going to happen is you're going to severely impact on trust, clear communications, accountability, and also that coaching commitment to excellence. It's going to impact all those levels if you don't communicate effectively. And interestingly, until I did this course, I didn't realise how much of a crap communicator I was. Because there's 4 channels of communication. I just thought, you know, we're talking like this, we're communicating. I've actually, in this room, I've used like in most business language, and we're pretty much all in here, are tuned in to the 2 primary channels that we use in business. So business language and education language, school language, is a combination of 2 channels. It's the information sharing channel and the warm, compassionate channel, where I'm not sharing information like a robot, because that is just pure information channel. I'm sharing it with a bit of warmth. That's how we sort of share stuff in business. 65% of the population tuned into that. 35% of the population, though, need the other 2 channels. What are they? Can anyone tell me? One of them, which is 20% of the population, is the fun channel. I don't throw a bit of humour and fun in here and there. I'm going to lose those people. And in a long presentation like this, if there's no fun thrown in, then those people will drop off. But looking around the room, because what you learn is you learn to read body cues, you learn to read the way people express themselves and what dress they wear. Not really many people were super strong in that in the room, so didn't really need to throw that much in. But there's another 15% that actually need straight to the point. Okay, and the way I present is actually pretty succinct and to the point to pick up those people. So I blend that in there as well. I don't dribble on about any of the sort of stuff I talk about. It's pretty much to the point, but it contains a lot of the details and facts as well, but not going overboard. So that's the 35%. In schools, because teachers aren't really good at that fun channel and the direct channel, that 35% of kids translates into the kids that become disengaged in schools, and as a result don't get their best education outcomes and can go on to problems later on in life. But that communication skills is actually a really, really important one. What I'd like to do is, I've left about 20 minutes for question answer, because there's a whole lot of stuff that I could have covered, that additional stuff that I just wasn't sure where you wanted to go to. So has anyone got any questions about anything that off the back of what we've covered so far? Does it make sense? Are there any tools there you might think are helpful? It's really the trust piece is absolutely mission critical. You've got to get that right, and that's underestimated. People talk about fundamentals. When they talk about teamwork, a lot of business leaders don't really sort of know where to start. You start with trust, full stop, end of story. Once you get that right, then you can move into the expectations, accountability, and the other stuff. Okay? But that trust piece is absolutely critical first up. Yep. And as a leader, it's about me and my self-trust as well. Yep. And part of that self-trust is also working through the mind viruses that you've all got, that I've had to work through as well. I meditate every morning, 20 minutes of a morning. And my meditation's primarily geared around freeing up any crap that's in there, and actually then placing intentions for what I want for the day. Because there's this whole field out there of opportunities that we'll only see if we're connected to where we want to go to, and if my mind knows where I want to go. Because if I don't set an intention for what it is where I want to go, non-consciously, my mind, non-conscious brain, doesn't have the radar or the scanning on to look for opportunities that are going to help my outcome be manifested. So I'll give you an example of that. I remember years ago, my eldest daughter, who's now 30, she was about 19. She had an old car, and I said I'll go halves in her to get a new car if she saw one and saved up the money. So she saw this car and she said, "Dad, I've seen this really cool car. Can we go up to the car yard and check it out?" Up at Hornsby, I was out on the North Shore of Sydney, and I said, "Yeah, no, that's great. What's it called?" "Oh, it's called a Toyota Yaris." I thought, "Oh, I haven't heard of that. It's cool." So we go up and take it for a test drive, and it's pretty cool and all that sort of stuff. We ended up buying it, but going back from the car yard back home, I hadn't seen one, right? We're taking it for test drive, it's pretty cool. So we set our mind on this. Driving home, I'd never seen one of these cars before. I saw 4 of them on the trip, 20-minute trip home. I hadn't seen one before. How does that work? Because I'd actually had the intention placed in my mind, that's where we want to go to. So all of a sudden, I start to see the opportunities. Billions of bytes of information come into my body every day through all of our senses. Billions of bytes of information. Okay? But I only manifest 2,000 thoughts a day. That's what I generate, 2,000 thoughts a day. So what happens is I have to spam off a whole lot of stuff. Guess what I spam off? I spam off stuff that doesn't fit with what it is that I'm seeking or my belief system. So what does that mean? It means that I actually need to get in here clarity on what it is that I want to be, do, or have. Otherwise, this incredibly powerful radar and scanning system here is not going to actually work effectively. And quantum science and the quantum science theory and the people who are doing work in this field are starting to actually show that there's a real science behind this. Okay, it's not some esoteric stuff. In fact, sports psychologists have been working with athletes at the Institute of Sport for years and years and years and years in that exact same principle. But do we do that? Maybe there's a couple of you that do, but I bet there's a lot of you that don't. And for probably best part of 6 or 7 years now, I've been meditating every morning. And I pushed back against meditation for decades because I thought it was for people that sort of sat on top of Mount Everest or up in the Himalayas and, sort of spent days just doing that and nothing else. I actually had a bit of a negative view. But I actually experienced it. One session I experienced in a workshop I was running for a client, and the client said, "Oh, can we pinch an hour of your day?" I did a full day session. "Can we pinch an hour of the day after lunch because I've got this guy coming in to do a meditation?" He says, "Oh, yes." I said, "That's okay." Right. The guy comes through the door. He's got dreadlocks. He's a bit of a surfy dude. "Hey, Piercy, how are you, mate?" "Oh, good. Are you going to join us?" I said, "Oh, okay." So I did this session with him, and it was just amazing. It was not like I thought previously, where you just sit there and your mind's blank. Okay, it had the stuff processes going through, and it was actually really, really beneficial. And what I found was it was really helpful. Every day, I can't go through, start a day unless the first thing I do when I get out of bed. I might get out of bed at 4:30 in the morning, and I'll still do it. It just gets me calibrated, and this energy. And anyone in here meditate, by the way? Yep. So when you're in that space, you feel this incredible connection to and like a floating sensation, connection to this other way of feeling. Yeah. Anyhow, I'm sort of. One of the things that I did was when I learnt this skill set, I learnt that there were 6 existential questions that correlate to the 6 different personality dimensions that we all have within us, but depending on those personality dimensions are not created equal. So there's one dominant personality dimension that's my base, and that's your base, and your base, of the 6. And each of those dimensions has a question that sits over here that I'm constantly trying to answer. Okay? The existential question that was the basic question that I was constantly trying to answer, that's big strong part of my personality, is am I lovable? So what that talks to is the type of person that wants to be liked, okay? And that's how I'm going to show and answer that question. Yeah. So when I understood that, and I understood that was the driver, and that was the problem, that was the thing that was holding me back from engaging in this feedback that needed to be engaged in. Once I got that, and I then learnt some skills around how to actually work beyond that, made a huge difference. Like another huge one that's the second biggest part of my personality, which sits there as also, is am I competent? And that used to manifest until I actually really understood that in terms of me sending that extra email. It's me doing that extra bit of on the report. I couldn't rest and enjoy life until I did that bit extra. I become the workaholic. Okay, and that's all to do with this existential question that sits up there. So for me, that was sort of, in the communication spaces, when I understood that am I lovable, that I was actually able to have the tougher conversations. And then it was around the techniques and skills of applying the principles there.
It comes back to self-awareness of what sort of...
Yeah, it is, but it's self-awareness, but it's not straightforward self-awareness because it's at a non-conscious level. And it wasn't until it was pointed out to me that this is part of who we are that I really got that sort of stuff. But thanks for everybody for your time, and I wish you all the best in your progress through this particular program, and more importantly, beyond the program. Thanks a lot, Tom.